At dawn, the rice noodle shops in Xing'an are already buzzing with life. For locals, a traditional breakfast is fresh rice noodles with savory toppings. Legend has it that the dish was invented by Qin Dynasty soldiers stationed here more than 2,000 years ago. People along the Lingqu Canal have not forgotten their roots. The distant past lives on in their stories, food, and collective imagination. While history is often unclear, there's little doubt that the conscripts working on the canal yearned to finish the job and return home. Yet while the headworks and 2 major channels have been completed, another problem was troubling the engineers. Unless they solved it, the canal would be unnavigable. Autumn in Xing'an begins around mid-November and lasts until January. The summer heat recedes, rainfall decreases, and clear, sunny days grow more frequent. The waters of the Lingqu Canal appear especially gentle. This team of archaeologists has been busy working along the canal for months. After much excavation, the ruins of a Qin city gate are emerging from the earth.
比如说哪一天我们突然发现了封泥，或者印章，或者简牍，好多问题可能就更好解决一些。
The team hopes this ancient site will yield inscribed artifacts, potentially solving the puzzles surrounding the Lingqu Canal. So far, there's been no such discovery. However, to archaeologist Wang Xing's surprise, the greatest find does not come from the land, but from under the water. Two years ago, Chen Xinghua, a scholar dedicated to researching the Lingqu Canal, noticed during a survey what appeared to be stones arranged in an unusual pattern underwater. With the lower water levels in autumn offering better visibility, Wang Xing conducted an underwater investigation. Beneath the canal's surface, rows of cut stone lay in orderly alignment, clearly part of a man-made structure. But why? To answer that, Wang Xing's mission was to dive into one of the canal's greatest mysteries. The Lingqu Canal was a shipping route that crossed mountains and valleys, with differences in elevation making traveling upstream difficult. The simplest way to overcome this was to haul boats by hand, which was slow and exhausting. Was there a smarter approach? Today the answer is obvious: sluice gates. But could the canal's chief architect, Commander Liu, have conceived of such an idea more than 2,000 years ago?
这个问题目前没有太多记载，但是我们就我现看到的，肯定要怎么样把这个蓄水要通好，它必须把这个水蓄起来，让这个船长一滴一过才能够通航。
The British historian Joseph Needham, who first visited the canal in the 1940s, believed that sluice gates probably did exist in Liu's time. Without them, he surmised, one must picture southbound barges being towed up the Xiangjiang River into the northern channel by gangs of trackers. If the Lingqu Canal did have such features, what might they have looked like? The earliest clear records date to about 1,200 years ago. In 868, a Tang dynasty official named Yu Mengwei arrived in the southern city of Guilin to serve as a local governor. By then, the canal had been in operation for at least a millennia. Even to Yu Mengwei, it was considered an ancient marvel. However, upon inspection, he found the canal choked with silt and badly damaged, making navigation nearly impossible. He carried out a series of repairs, including renovations to the existing sluice gates. This proves the canal already had such features in the Tang era. These had a distinctive name, doumen.
这个呢，就是灵渠上面的斗门了，它叫新桥斗，它的作用和原理呢，也就是和现在的这个船闸的原理，是相通的。
Looking at the weathered stone remnants now, it is hard to picture how these sluice gates were built or how they worked. And there are no detailed historical records. Yet along the banks of the canal, some elders still remember. The craft lives on in stories handed down through generations.
我们村上也就一两个人懂这个了，曾祖父嘛，他一直跑船运盐啊、杂油这些东西，祖传的。枯水季节也跑这个，就用这个斗了。这个斗它可以把那个水位提高，那个船就可以通行了。他就说有3根斗杆，马甲，斗垫，斗拼。
Working together, experts and locals have revived some ancient techniques. The main materials they use are wood and bamboo, abundant along the canal and chosen for being light, flexible, and resilient. The craftsmanship involves sawing, planing, cutting, splitting, and weaving. In just 3 days, a small team of seasoned workers completed the basic components of a doumen. Now, let's see how it works. This is the most physically demanding step in installing the doumen, as the water-soaked timber beam is incredibly heavy. After placing the diagonal and base bars, the next piece is the front bar.
它呢就是上面这里呢，你看这里有个凹槽，和对面那里也都是有一个凹槽，放一根横的木杆，我们称为它为面杠，这样就把它支撑住了。现在放这个马叉了。
The tripods are set across the lock bars to support the bamboo stop plank.
现在放竹拼了。
A bamboo fence is laid across the timber tripods. Then covered with tightly woven bamboo curtains, creating a sluice gate. Building a doumen takes just minutes. Once sealed, the water level would rise. to travel upstream. A series of these gates would be lowered behind the boat, allowing it to effectively climb slopes and cross ridges. In the autumn and winter, boats traveling downstream needed gates to be lowered ahead of them to catch enough water for navigation. When the boat reached the doumen, a single support bar was knocked loose, collapsing the gate and allowing the boat to pass. The components of the gates were later retrieved and reused. With simple materials, straightforward craft, and efficient operation, these primitive gates enabled boats to cross mountains. After dredging the channel, reinforcing the embankments, and improving the sluice gates, Yu Mengwei believed the canal flowed with such force that even a large cargo ship could be handled by a single man. By large, he likely means a boat weighing roughly 6 tons. In the 1980s, the International Commission on Large Dams sent more than 30 experts to inspect the Lingqu Canal. They lauded the canal as a pearl of ancient hydraulic engineering and concluded that doumen were the forefather of modern shiplocks. If the design and construction of the Lingqu Canal were indeed magical, as some scholars believed, then the most amazing part was doumen. It is perhaps fitting this engineering was labeled as Ling, meaning ingenious, almost supernatural. Since the Tang Dynasty, the name has held fast. Today, 14 relatively intact lock ruins still stand along the Lingqu Canal. Records show there were 18 in the Tang era. That number doubled after renovations in the Song Dynasty. Through cycles of expansion and disuse, 35 doumen were still in operation as late as the 1800s. The stone arrangement Wang Xing found underwater is likely the remains of one such lock. On a follow-up dive to take more detailed measurements, he reached a preliminary conclusion.
也有可能我们现在做的这个就是文献里面早期记载的那个北斗的位置。这个斗的记载它很早了，北斗它可能在唐代的文献里面就有记载，但是从它这个工艺上看，这类的条石对应到明清时期的城墙还有墓葬，初步估计应该是清代的。
Why this doumen lies underwater is still to be ascertained. While there is no conclusive proof the doumen was a Qin invention, we have faith in the innovation of Liu and his engineers. The sluice gates may have been the final piece of the puzzle. Once ships were able to cross the mountains, the Lingqu Canal was complete. The canal opened in 214 BC. Supplies flowed in and the troops were fed. China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang's vision of unity was finally realized through this waterway. His generals Renal and Zhao Duo led the conquest of the historic Lingnan region, with commanderies later established at Nanhai, Guilin, and Xiangjun. For the first time, Lingnan was part of a unified Chinese empire. expanding the Qin's territory to about 3.4 million square kilometers.
中原第一次大批移民迁居广西的一个局面，从此揭开了广西与中原民族交往、交融和交流历史的进程。在先秦时期，广西还处在古国藩国这个发展阶段，到了秦代以后，进入了封建式时代，这个是一个历史性的跨越。
Yet the unification of Lingnan did not secure lasting strength for the Qin Empire. The emperor's vision and stubbornness were two sides of the same coin. They built an empire, yet also sowed the seeds of its swift demise. Emperor Qin Shi Huang died at the age of 51 while on an inspection tour in 210 BC, plunging the empire into crisis. 3 years later, the rebel leader Liu Bang captured the Qin capital of Xianyang, today part of the northern Shaanxi province. The dynasty soon collapsed. Amid the chaos, the Nanhai commandant, Renao, summoned the county magistrate Zhao Tuo, urging him to rally the troops and preserve the South's autonomy. Zhao Tuo raised an army in 204 BC, absorbed the commanderies of Guilin and Xiangjuan, and established the Nanyue Kingdom. He proclaimed himself king and made Panyu, present-day Guangzhou, his capital.
赵佗是一个很有远见的一个政治家。第一个政策就是应用当地的民族首领为官，参与到南越国的管理。第二个，他是尊重当地的越人习俗，他自己就号称为蛮夷大佬，所以得到广大越人的认同。
还有呢，就是他鼓励北方来的人跟越人通婚，促进了文化的融合和民族的融合。在这方面，他的贡献是很大的。
Zhao Tuo inherited Emperor Qin Shi Huang's ambition, but ruled with more pragmatism and openness, accelerating the integration of Lingnan and the Central Plains. The historical records are silent on the Lingqu Canal in this turbulent time. Its location tells us it was still an important lifeline. Just across the Yuecheng Ridge lay the Han Empire's Changsha Kingdom. The two rival powers likely battled for control of the canal, and Zhao Tuo was probably the one who prevailed, as losing it would have opened a direct route from the Central Plains, placing his kingdom in grave peril. Zhao Tuo ruled the Nanyue Kingdom for 67 years and is said to have lived to 100. After his death, the kingdom lasted 4 more reigns until it was conquered by Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty in 111 BC. A century had passed since the Qin campaign against Lingnan. The Xiao people who once resisted the Qin army began to gradually fade from historical records and likely merged into the multi-ethnic fabric of the region. Yet the fate of the canal's chief architect Lu, or Shi Lu, as he's referred to in some texts, remains a mystery. Though in charge of the waterway's construction, he attracted little attention from the chroniclers of his time. Once the canal was completed, the emperor's grand designs and the rise and fall of dynasties took center stage.
至今为止呢，我们新安县也有史信，但是，因为时间太长，是否是史路的后裔，还在继续的探讨、挖掘和研究这个过程当中。
If only we could travel back to meet Liu, not just to question him, but also to witness his many trials and triumphs. The moments of despair and rare glimpses of joy.
他当时开始接到任务的时候，肯定是心情很沉重的，因为这个是一个很大的一个难题，在修建的时候困难重重。通过他们不断的勘察和地址的选择、精辟的施工等等，解决了一系列的困难和问题。它修成了以后啊，它这个成就感应该是无以言语的。
But what happened to Liu after? For thousands of years, people have scoured for every clue. Did he march on with Renlo and Zhao Tuo, fighting to complete the emperor's conquest of Lingnan? Did he live long enough to see the tides of history turn? Where the history books fall silent, archaeology may yet hold the answer, which is why Wang Xing returns to the Qincheng ruins day after day, leaving no stone unturned.
我们在上次的基础上面积上扩大了，新开了一个区 B 区，通过勘探发现了有那个建筑的迹象，但是那组建筑比我们想象中的大，所以到现在我们还没有揭露完。可能这个城比我们想象中的更复杂，但是它总有一期，就是早期的那一期，它是跟陵区应该是能对应起来的。可能至少有个10年8年持续的工作，然后才能可能把它基本的情况搞清楚。
Though the excavation has yet to produce a breakthrough, it is widely held that this ancient city is closely linked to the Lingqu Canal. Did the mysterious Liu ever leave the banks of his canal? Might he have stayed in the city after his work was done? If so, traces of his remarkable life might be found among these weathered fragments of brick and tile. Perhaps he is buried here, next to the whispering waters of the Lingqu Canal as it flows ever onwards.